Don't know where to start? Then this video might be for you. I'm going to share with you a couple of my favorite ways to jumpstart the art journal process. And then I'm going to guide you step by step to creating a colorful, multi-layered background. So here is how I jumpstart. Look to nature. This is a rhododendron in my garden. I love the soft pinks and the yellow. This is inspiring me and it's guiding my color choices. Once I have the color choices, I'm going to use what I already have in my stash. I'm going through my gel printing stash and I'm pulling things with that pink and that yellow that were inspired by what's growing and blooming in my backyard. I'm pulling out a variety of pages and then I'm going to select a couple of them to start my page. One of my favorite ways is to do what I call the rip-a-strip technique, where all you're doing is you take a gel print, scrapbook paper, any collage paper really, and you rip it. Large or small, I try to pick different patterns and I get different shapes. I try to use different weights of paper because, again, that builds interest into your background. So I'm limiting myself actually on this page to two basic gel prints. This one that is primarily the Naples yellow and the other one that's quinacridone magenta with a little bit of Naples yellow in there. Both of them have patterns that I like. They seem to work together. Now I'm just ripping these papers out and playing with them on the substrate that I've chosen. Now, I spend a lot of time playing with this and going this way and that way. And when I finally glue them down, it's going to be totally a different way. And that's okay. You just want to rip them, layer them up, move them around till you like what you see. I like to get larger pieces and smaller pieces. I cut a straight edge like you just saw me doing to go at the top of the page. Now, this will set my color scheme, although I did choose that from what was blooming in my yard. And it's going to guide my choices as to patterns that I'm going to use. And it's just going to be that first layer. Then I decided, before I glue those strips down, I want a little bit of patterning and a contrast underneath. So I grabbed my DIY stamp and I am stamping some pattern there. And I know when I come to glue those strips down, I'm going to be gluing right on top of that. So some of this is going to be hidden. And that's okay. When you are building layers, you will push back what's gone before. So this, gluing the gel prints now, that is the second layer. I believe we are up to 7 in this page, but you can count along and let me know how many you get. So this is a great use for gel prints that may not be overly exciting, but once you rip them, something magical happens. So you can go through your gel prints, pick colors that you like, that you think work together, and glue them down. Layer them up because the more layers of paper on top of each other, you get texture there very easily. And I'm gluing this down with my fluid matte medium. You can use Mod Podge or other decoupage materials or gel medium. So I had ripped a few strips and played with them. And now as I'm going to end up ripping a few more and adding it on as I go. As I said, there's no right or wrong. This process is kind of intuitive. Put it down and it's just one more layer. So that was 2 layers. So here's the third layer. We're putting modeling paste through this stencil, TCW stencil. And this is adding another layer of patterning and some more texture. We want texture, we want layers, we want color. And that's the secret, non-secret, to a wonderful page. So once the modeling paste is completely dry, now I am adding some gesso and coloring. So that's layer 4. Now you could leave lots of white space. I seem to be white space challenged, and I always end up basically colorizing all that white space, but you can't leave it. So I'm adding gesso, I'm kind of blocking it. Remember, this is a background. It isn't about just those collage papers. I want to use them to make the background. So I'm adding quinacridone magenta and my Naples yellow. I'm mixing it up and it's getting that corally pinky color that my rhododendron was. I just keep adding this on. The papers, when you rip those strips, they seem to add movement to the page. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons I like the rip a strip technique. Now, you're right, the stamping that I did with my DIY mark maker in black, a lot of that's been pushed back. You're not going to see a lot of it, but I did like it and it guided me. Now, as I said, I'm white space challenged, so I pretty much lost all my white. So I'm taking a makeup sponge with white paint on it and going over the textured areas just to bring them out. I want that white, that contrast, because contrast is what makes pages pop. So I might have my quinacridone magenta and my Naples yellow. That's my colors, but then I'm going to use black and white to add contrast. This stencil is called Diamond Plate, and it is from the Crafter's Workshop. And I'm stenciling some white through it, again, to add even more white into the page and more pattern. So we were at layer 4. If we count this stenciling, that's layer 5. And then I'm going to stamp some text. Now I want this to be, I want small scale patterning. So that's why I've chosen the text. And I'm using my archival ink here instead of stamping with my black acrylic paint because I want it more faded. I don't want it bright and bold. So this is layer 6. And I'm just stamping around here. This is adding some text. I like text, whether it's script or like book paper. Now, at this point, I don't know what focal image I'm going to put on here. I'm just having fun making the layers. Layer 7, I am stamping with black acrylic paint that I'm brayering onto this honeycomb stamp. And I love what this does. The contrast with the black against those soft pastel colors, it just livens up this page. And it was at this point I go, okay, I'm approaching the end, or I thought I was at the end of my background, ready to start searching and deciding on a focal image. And make sure you clean your stamps when you've used acrylic paint on them. I just spray it with my Murphy's oil soap. Now I'm grabbing my angle brush and I'm shading around because, like I said, I thought I was done with this background. We have 7 layers. I thought I was done. I shade, I'm framing the page, and then I'm going to move to the next stage, which is picking my focal image. Now, we're over here in the color scheme, the pinks and the yellows, and that coral that I mix. And over here we have the turquoise. So I just want to add a little bit more contrast and a little more color and interest. So I grab my dot stamp, one of my favorites, and I'm putting on bright aqua and stamping. Because they are across the color wheel from each other, this will work really well together. I'm just putting on the paint with my makeup sponge and just stamping it. Now, this background, you could put a multitude of focal images, flowers, butterflies, anything that you really want to do, a black and white or something that you're going to color. I ended up going through my napkin stash to use on this. But this, you can make this background using what you have, these colors, and put a completely different focal image on it. And there's a close-up of this luscious, luscious background. I love how this background is. And I can make this background again and do with another focal image. So here's the focal image I've chosen. This is the farm pig napkin from Ninny's Napkins. She has a whole series of farm animals. This is farm donkey, farm sheep. This is alpaca friends, farm Highland cattle, farm cow. There's also a cat and a dog. All of these are wonderful, great size focal images for your art journal pages. I'm using this one just for fun. So I've cut out the pig and I'm positioning it where I want it. And then I'm going to peel off the 2 excess layers. Now, the first layer here comes off pretty easy, but sometimes the napkins stick together a little too much. I'm not sure if it's the brand of napkin or just something that happens. So as you watch here, I'm pulling it. I'm having a hard time pulling this out. Just go little by little, step by step. Don't panic. You can even see it starts to rip. But I use that one because when you glue it down, you can't even see where the rip is. I just went to the other side and pulled off the layer. That excess layer, let's keep that. We're going to use it in the art journal process. So once I have my focal image, I went and I found some pig related sayings and typed them out. I'm going to do some for all the animals because I'm going to use these. If this is a sentiment pack that you'd be interested in, let me know in the comment section below and I'll get a little bit faster on it. So once I have my sentiments, I'm just cutting them out into the blocks. That's going to help me audition them and see them on the page. And then I can cut more or less of the white off and rearrange the sentiment, the words, however will fit my page better. When you buy a digital sentiment pack from me or somebody else, you can resize it. So no matter what size your page is, ATC to a 9 by 12, you can make it fit so that it all works together. And that's one of the great things about digital stamps and digital sentiments as opposed to physical stamps. One size and that's it. So I decided to go with the saying, live like someone left the gate open. And then I'm cutting it apart and, I'm kind of overlapping some of the words and having it flow from the top to bottom. So your eye goes, the whole route. And I picked a font that was bold so that it stood out on this very busy but beautiful background. So I really liked where I've landed them, and I didn't want to lose it. So I thought I'm just going to glue them on right now. I grabbed my fluid matte medium. I'm putting a coat underneath and on top. I'll deal with the focal image right away, but I'm going to glue these down so I don't have to worry about figuring it out. If you're looking for a good sentiment pack that might work for these animals, sassy sayings. It's kind of like snarky comments, and you can make the animals kind of say that, whether it's on an art journal page, a canvas, or on a card. So I've peeled off the layers. Now I am water cutting the excess napkin off. And I'm just doing that. I have a liner brush and I'm using very little water. You don't need a lot of water. And I'm just cutting it as close as I can to that. I prefer the deckled edge that you get using this technique to cutting it with scissors. but you can cut it with scissors. Something like this is pretty easy to cut with scissors. I just suggest that you don't peel off the layers, cut with the scissors, then peel off the layers. So that's all done, and I'm ready to glue down my focal image. But you can see the background coming through, some of that teal, that aqua, the black, and if I just glued this down, that would come through and it really would not look good. So we need to add a step in here. And I am going to paint with white gesso the area underneath the pig. So to help myself out, I am just grabbed a white Stabilo all pencil. It's a watercolor pencil. You could use a watercolor pencil, you could use chalk, anything that is removable. And I'm just tracing this so I know where to paint the gesso, the white gesso. I want it white underneath where I'm going to be gluing down the pig. So there's my white gesso. You can use white paint if that's what you have. And I'm using an angle brush. I prefer using it. I find it gets into the corners. And I'm painting. I'm not going right to the edge of where my Stabilo all pencil line is. And I know it's hard for you to see, and I'm just working my way around. Now I kind of can't really even see where that second ear is, so I come back and put the pig back on there and identify exactly where it is, maybe draw the lines a little bit bolder. And I'm just filling it in. And I do go back and I give it a couple layers because I want it white. I want to make sure that the black or that um, bright aqua doesn't come through. So here I didn't quite have enough, so I'm just put the pig down there and I'm adding a little bit more paint. You just want to be careful not to get that wet paint on your focal image. So take the time to dry in between and um, don't rush and make mistakes because so there is the pig shape, and I grabbed a baby wipe. You can just use a wet rag, and I'm getting rid of the Stabilo all pencil, the white line. I don't want that. That was just a guideline. So once the white is removed, I'm going to position my focal image where I want it, and I'm going to glue that down with the fluid matte medium. I do the top half first, and then you're just going to see me doing the bottom half as well. And I use a liberal amount of the fluid matte medium. I put some underneath, and then I put some on top to seal the napkin because I am going to add or tweak to that coloring, and I want it to be a non-porous surface. So there I'm doing the bottom half. Just by doing it half and half, it just makes it easier to eliminate the um, wrinkles. Now there was a little bit of excess gesso on the sides there, and you're seeing me, I just grabbed the Naples yellow and the quinacridone magenta I'm going to be adding here, and I'm just painting that out. And I'm just playing with it until you can't tell that I made that mistake. So don't panic if you overshoot the area. There's always a way of fixing it up. And there you go. It's like that never happened. Now I grab my angle brush and black acrylic paint and I'm going to shade around the pig. I'm going to shade on the pig to accentuate some of it, and I'm going to shade on the outside so it pops from the background. This technique that I'm using is a lazy man's version of the floating acrylic technique that I learned when I did folk art painting. But it is a very valuable technique to handle. So I'm just working our way around, going around the ears. as well as the face of the pig, just to add any of those that shading in. And this is why you want that napkin to have a good coat of matte medium or adhesive on it, so it doesn't just wick out. That will give you an effect that you will not be happy with. So you need to make it a non-porous surface first. So now I'm going to grab my Inktense blocks and I'm just going to tweak the color of the pinks and the colors that are in the pig by matching it with something I have in my Inktense. And the Inktense blocks are ink, not watercolor, but they are water activated. And they're very translucent. So I prefer them for colorizing sometimes, where I just want a hint more color, but you can water down acrylic paints and do the same thing. So here I'm just adding a little bit more color and I'm just changing it up, adding a little bit of white gesso to brighten and lighten some of those spots. And off to the side, I have that original napkin. So I'm looking at it, using it as a guide. You can change up anything, any focal image in the same manner. I love the size of these farm animal napkins. They make awesome focal images. I'm adding, making the black a little bit bolder. Now there's these little white hairs on the napkin that I've lost because I've colored. So I'm grabbing my fine line brush and thinning white paint, and then I'm just going to paint those hairs in. You could definitely skip this if it's not within your comfort level, but it's just another way of just making that napkin focal your own. And then I'm adding a few other highlight lines just around using my fine line brush. The areas that were white on the napkin, I'm just adding to them. And you can again do as much or as little of this as you feel comfortable with. Grab my black Posca pen and outlining my sentiment to make it stand out just a little bit more. Go through phases. Sometimes I outline them all the time, and other times I just leave them as they were. And then I'm doing a line, dot, dot, border all the way around my page, just to frame it. Some days you feel like doodling, some days you don't. I'm peeling off the tape. Help yourself out by using your heat tool. Now remember that extra ply? Bring it back. We're using it to cover up. I don't want the splattering on the face of my focal image, my pig here. And then I'm splattering with thin white acrylic paint and my fan brush. I'm going to take that before it dries. See, no splatters. And there we have the finished page. Fun, colorful, 7-layer background. Easy peasy. And there's the original napkin. Close-ups of the finished page follow. Take the time to subscribe to my channel if you're not already a subscriber. And if you are, thank you so much. Until next time, live like someone left the gate open and go get creative.